So let's talk about Mucuna Pruriens for a second. So this is a very, very interesting chemical from my perspective. And I think it doesn't get enough recognition for how powerful it is, right? I think in the nootropics community and in the biohacking community, there's a lot of hearsay. And so people think like because it has L-DOPA in it, which it does, that is bad because there's a ton of research on L-DOPA and some of it's good and some of it's bad, right? But a lot of that is referring to, actually all of it is referring to pharmaceutical preparations of L-DOPA, straight L-DOPA. With Mucuna, you're getting a lot of other chemicals, anti-inflammatory chemicals, phytochemicals, that like do hosts of other things in addition to like the L-DOPA in the extract providing you one step away from usable dopamine, right? Because in the dopamine conversion process, it's really like it's tyrosine, it's the conversion to L-DOPA, and then DOPA's conversion to dopamine. Mucuna has been extremely useful. Like I've used it for me in a couple areas, and it's been really useful. But particularly in business clients, consulting clients, the guys that I'm consulting on nootropics and performance. In so many situations, one of them being like modafinil burnout, right? If you take modafinil, and some people have this response, that the next day you might feel some degree of like lost motivation and general kind of fatigue, like a lack of that productive energy. And for some people, the reason that happens to them is because the dopamine release that's being induced by modafinil is jeopardizing the reserves of dopamine for a temporary period. Now that usually balances out relatively quickly, but you can actually avoid that completely by just having Mucuna in the mix while you take the modafinil, or even post taking the modafinil, or even the next morning, right? Just as those sort of lack of motivation effects may start to typically kick in. You fully understand like your body and what's going to happen. That tends to be really interesting. But alternatively, like in other situations, man, I have seen Mucuna Pruriens, just a Mucuna Pruriens supplement, be effective for sexual performance in ways that nothing else is. Because like you can try to restore the dopaminergic system with 9-MeBC as an example, but though it will help in potentiating receptor expression and general dopaminergic system regeneration, well, it's not really contributing to it's called the releasable pool, the reserves of dopamine. It's not contributing to that, right? And so sure, you could take tyrosine, but then that has to convert. It's 2 steps away ultimately from dopamine. And if you don't convert it correctly to L-DOPA then dopamine, and that's dependent on a couple enzymes, then your net yield of dopamine won't be as high. Whereas with Mucuna, you're skipping that step, and you're also skipping D1, I think it's D1 receptor auto inhibition, or auto receptor function on the D1 side, which really regulates the dopamine kind of throughput to receptor site. So it's completely out of the question, the auto receptor, which is really, really interesting. So I've seen it do a lot of really interesting things for people. And if you just spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes on PubMed researching Mucuna Pruriens and its effect on sexual function, its effect on dopamine restoration, its effect on the dopaminergic system in general, it's like some of those keywords, and read papers on what it's clinically been studied to be effective at doing, like you'd probably be blown away. The stuff is really interesting. I don't suggest taking it every day or something, because then you could potentially run into this desensitization of dopamine receptors. But it's like you also, people have to recognize about that in a typical Mucuna supplement, you're getting like 15% L-DOPA of like an 800 milligram of material. So it's not a lot of L-DOPA. And again, this is not a pharmaceutical preparation of L-DOPA. So I just want to put that out there for folks to not let Mucuna just be sort of disregarded as like ineffective or whatever. Think about it. I'm going to be doing some content about it because there's a lot of relevance to, I think, you people, to nootropics for sure, and to many other things, even aside from nootropics. I mean, I just like, I have seen and been a part of it in a consulting capacity, situations where, you know, the restoration of dopamine reserves was like really critical, and Mucuna was very useful. So think about it. Much more to discuss. Please go on PubMed and start reading some of those studies, because you'll be surprised at some of the interesting stuff that it can do, like repairing nerve endings in the male penis, like all kinds of weird stuff. This stuff is just really interesting. And understand that a Mucuna supplement has many other constituents to it than just L-Dopa. Thanks for watching.